Welcome everyone to this presentation of AirMagic. This is the world's first fully automated photo editing software, and we've got Abba Shapiro, who's a pro photographer. He is the co-director of our education team here at Skylum, and he will be showing you some of the ins and outs of using AirMagic so that you can use this program and see all the fantastic artificial intelligence that's built into it. So I think you're really going to enjoy this. Abba, thank you so much for presenting, and thank you everyone for watching today.
Thank you so much, Laurie, and thank you everybody for joining us. I'm really excited about the AirMagic product. It's really great. I've been shooting with drones for a couple of years, and I love working with drones. I love getting the images. I love tweaking them, but sometimes I just want to be able to do it quick, and I want to take advantage of the technologies that is out there, and that's exactly what AirMagic does. Using artificial intelligence and machine learning, we created this product which is as simple as drag and drop to enhance your images. And as you can see on my screen, I actually have an image that I opened up and did just a drag and drop processing with AirMagic. On the left side is the original image, and on the right is the after. So this is what came out of the drone. And by just dropping it on, it really has enhanced what's happening inside my photograph. And let me explain a little bit about what's happening under the hood and how we achieve this. So I mentioned earlier that we're using AI and machine learning. Well, let me actually explain that because it always sounds like voodoo. What we did is we took tens of thousands of photos and we had the before photos, and we also did after photos where these were hand processed by photographers to enhance the image the way that they would want to improve it. And then we compared those to each other, and the machine learned exactly what kind of adjustments were done to different areas of the image, to water, to foliage, to sky. And then we use a lot of our algorithms, a fancy word for math, to be able to recreate that so that AirMagic can discover what's happening inside the photo, can recognize skies and clouds, and can use what it's learned from the before and after to fix your images. So it's not just a quick fix where it's like a generic thing where we're going to expand the dynamic range and punch up colors. It's really determining what's inside the image, and based on what it has learned from these before and after photographs, it can then correct them. So that's where the artificial intelligence or the AI part comes in. And we're doing a lot of things with our image. We're removing haze because a lot of times when you're shooting a drone, you don't have the perfect environment. Weather is always working against us. It could be a gray day. So we're removing haze, we're enhancing the sky. We're revealing a lot more of the details in the image. Occasionally, we're boosting colors where appropriate. And we're also detecting what drone might have been used to take these images. So we're also giving you the opportunity to do some lens correction. And one of the biggest challenges with drone photography is that in most cases, the sensor or the camera on your drone is relatively small. So sometimes even smaller than perhaps the sensor or the camera on your phone, let alone on a full 1-inch camera. Now, granted, there are drones out there that do have those 1-inch cameras, but most of us are using drones with smaller cameras that there has to have been some give and take to reduce its weight and size. And what AirMagic does is it compensates for that. It understands any distortion, it understands maybe some over sharpening that might have been done, or even just the ability for it to capture the image that you would have seen with your eye, assuming you're a bird, that the drone actually sees. So we're taking that all into account when we're processing our images. So I just wanted to give you an overview of, what's behind or what's under the hood, because at first blush, it seems very basic. You're dropping your photo onto pieces of software, onto an application, and it magically, thus the name AirMagic, fixes everything. And I want you to know that we're doing more than just a quick fix. There's a lot happening under the hood. It's an incredibly powerful application. So what I want to do next is to walk you through the process of using AirMagic as a standalone application. And you don't need any other third party or any of the other applications for photo editing necessarily, such as Photoshop or Lightroom or Photos. But if you do have those applications, those specifically Photoshop, Lightroom, and Photos for the Mac, you can use AirMagic as a plugin. So you can leverage the power of those applications in concert with the power of AirMagic. So I will later on in the webinar talk about the workflow of going from, say, Photoshop or Lightroom or Photos into AirMagic, leveraging its power, and then bringing it back. So we'll look at 4 scenarios: self-contained, which may be the best solution for a lot of folks, and then we'll look at using it as a plugin. So as you see here, I have an image. I'm going to close this out and start from scratch just so you can see the different workflows that you can do with AirMagic. So I'll simply close this out. It'll give me a warning saying, do you want to quit? Do you want to save this? We're going to quit, and we're going to start fresh. So I have a folder here of images, and this is a variety of images. And here I have some camera raw images, some digital negatives. Generally, most drones shoot a .dng file, which is the equivalent of a RAW. If you shoot, say, Nikon or Canon or Sony, and you have those NEF files or ARW files, CR2 files. Well, DNG is more of a global generic RAW format, and most drones shoot that. So I have those, but it also works with JPEGs and TIFFs. So whatever images you might shoot, you can leverage the power of AirMagic. So for instance, here I have some photos, and we can see most of these are DNGs, but I do have a couple of JPEGs in here, and I want to show you how powerful it can be with those. So if I want to process an image, and I'm going to go back to my sample image folder, and let me make this a little bigger so we can see what's in these images. I have a few ways that I can start working with AirMagic. I can launch the program by clicking on the icon. If I have a shortcut on my desktop, whether I'm on a Windows or a Macintosh, works the same way. I can launch the application however I would normally launch it, whether it's on the desktop or in my startup area, and I'll be greeted with this interface. As a matter of fact, just so you can focus on that, I'm going to move these images out of the way. And once you're with this interface, you can either drag your photos directly onto the interface, a single photo, multiple photos, or even an entire folder of photos, because AirMagic allows you to individually process each image, or if you would prefer, you can batch process your images. So it can be a very quick way to bring in your photos, make them better, and export them with little or no involvement in working on the details of every single one. Just make them better and let it go. And we'll look at that. So I can do it that way, or I can click the open button, and then using Explorer or the Finder, I can dig into a folder and open an image. For the sake of not doing everything many times, I'll just start by dropping an image on the folder or on the desktop application, and you can see what happens. And I'm going to just arbitrarily pick this one here. I'll drop that on. Immediately, let me move this out of the way, it starts processing the image. And it's analyzing, you notice it did it quickly. You'll get to see this again because I'll work with a bunch of other images, but it analyzes the contents of the image and does its best analysis of how it can improve it. And you can see just by looking at the before image on the left and the after image on the right that it really has made this image pop. Much nicer on the right than on the left. And that's great because I can just go ahead, export this, and share it. Now you have a lot of controls that are kind of hidden, and hidden only because we want you to take advantage of the beauty of the interface. But if I look at this and I decide that AirMagic has done maybe too much processing for my taste, or I want to push it a little harder, there's a small brush to the bottom right corner of the interface. And if I click on that, I see a slider. And the slider's at about 60% by default. If I move that slider to the left, it's going to blend the processed image back to the original image so I can control how aggressive PhotoLeamer has processed my image. If I move it to the right, all the way up to 100%, you can see I can accentuate how dramatic it's improving the image. And maybe I do want something that really pops. Or maybe my original image was so faded or so haze covered that I want to really push what AirMagic is doing. So it's nice, even though it's a drag and drop and you could just get it right out the door, if you decide, you can dial back or push the amount that AirMagic affects your original image. While we're in here, you'll notice there's a little circle here to the left, and that's the automatic lens correction. And by default, it's off. But if I click on this, AirMagic, if it recognizes the drone, and we're updating this on a regular basis, and the camera in the drone, it can correct for any lens abnormalities. Maybe it's a little bit more fisheye coming off that specific lens, and AirMagic will correct that. So you have a choice if you want to do that. If it's black, it's on. If it's gray, it's off. You can see it very quickly reanalyzes the image. And I have a choice here. So many times that's all you may want to do or need to do. And then when I'm done, and I'm going to just be working on a single image, I can choose to export this. When I click on export, I'm greeted with several different options, and these might vary a little bit between Mac and Windows. And as we develop more options, you'll see they'll be added and updated automatically. But let's go take a look at the disk option, which is basically sending out some sort of a processed image that you can upload. I'm going to save this to my desktop, and let's make this a little bigger so you can see what's happening. And by default, you're seeing just a very limited set of controls. I can put out a JPEG, and there I can choose how compressed I want it to be. If I want to put out another format, maybe a higher quality, a TIFF image, if I select that, I can choose how compressed I might want it to be. So maybe I have some compression. And then if I wanted to, I can also step into advanced settings. And when you open up advanced settings, you have a lot more options when you're working with exporting your images. And this is especially nice when you're starting to do a batch process or a group of images that you're exporting. But the nice thing is I can rename the exported image. I can change the prefix if I wanted to. I can change the suffix. I can control what letters are there. It's pretty much self-explanatory once you step inside of the advanced area. But it's really nice that if I'm exporting an image, I may make an automatic prefix or suffix that says modified. So I may go with the file name or a timestamp or a custom text, and I may say, oh, when I export that, just add AirMagic to the end so I know that this is specifically already processed by this application. If I'm going into a different format, such as TIFF, we had compression earlier, and there's different ways you can compress a TIFF image, but you can also choose the bit depth. So I can export a 16-bit TIFF file, which will retain a lot of the nuance in the color space, so I won't get banding in my sky. And that's really nice. And I can also choose to resize it if I want. Because depending on the drone that you might have 12 or 20 megapixels to work with, and that could be a rather large image. And if you just wanted to upload it or email it, and you might want a smaller image, I can change that and I can say, you know what, I want the longest dimension to be, say, 1200 pixels, and it will automatically scale that down. So that is one of my options. I'm going to switch back to original because I like to have the full size images. And I can also, once I go through this, I can save my settings, and we'll call this the webinar. And now I have this as a preset that I can use anytime I want. And I just want to point out that if you look under format and you switch to some of the different ones, such as JPEG, you do have some options here. You have the color space that you can work with, and the same is true for most of these. And you can even save it as a .psd file if you're going to be working with it in Photoshop. But we'll take it back to the TIFF file, and I'm going to export that, and I'm exporting that to my desktop, and I'll simply click Continue. And then it starts doing its magic. Okay, and the nice thing is while it's analyzing things, whether you're importing it or exporting it, you'll see a variety of tips that show up, which really are tips to shoot better drone photography. Because at Skylum, we don't just want to have you process good images, we want to help you create good images. So it's really nice. So we tend not to read these little pop-ups, but all of those are great little tips and techniques that you can use. So when you're shooting, your images will be better in camera or in drone. Thus, they'll ultimately be better once you process them. Once it's processed, it's on my desktop. I could find it easily, but AirMagic allows you to locate it very quickly. I'll click on that. There's the image. It's a TIFF file. I can open that up. And as you can see, there's my beautiful after image. Let me go ahead and close this and show you some other workflows that you can do. So if I wanted to, I could drop another image on here without changing anything, and it's smart enough to just put that first image aside. So let me actually grab a bunch of images, a folder of images. I have a folder, these sample images. There's 10 images inside here. One is going to be a little bit redundant because I've already processed one, but I want to show you that I can grab just the folder, drop it right on. I should be able to do this. I'll grab the images, I think, because I have one image here. It's not letting me do the folder. There we go. Drag those 10 images on. Oh, I forgot to hit done. This is real world. I forgot to hit the done button in my excitement. Let me try this again. Yeah, it does work. Grab the sample image folder. You see, as soon as I put it over, I haven't let go of my mouse yet. The first image is just moved to the upper left-hand corner, so it doesn't get moved in case I want to change my mind, or I'll show you what I can do else that's really nice. And then it scans all the other images inside that folder. And it's doing an initial scan. You notice that as I'm speaking, each one of these images are being updated with a preview of what it would look like after I process it with the default settings of AirMagic. The reason I wanted to keep that first image here because I can now show you that if I really liked what I did to that first image, I can click on it, I can right click on it specifically and apply the settings that I used for that first image to all of the other images that I just dropped on. And then I can go and right ahead and export them immediately with that processing. So you can treat one, and if you shot a whole bunch of photos that one day and the environment was pretty much the same, the time was pretty much the same, you can fine tune one and apply that very easily to an entire folder of images that you've selected from that shoot. And it's going through and tweaking these. Now I'm not locked in at this point. If one of the images I think is being over or under corrected or I want to modify it, I can still double click on any of these to open it up. And then once it has been opened, I can once again select that little brush. And maybe I want to dial this one back or really accentuate it. Or maybe I do want to apply the lens correction. And so I fixed this one image. I'm going to go ahead, close it by clicking on the little X in the upper left-hand corner. Now this one has a unique processing that's different from these other ones, which in themselves are customized because it was created after that first one. I also just want to point out, I'm going to open up one of these other images. Here we have a sunset image. It's a lot more red sky. And AirMagic is smart enough that it recognizes different skies based upon the different time of the day. So obviously, if you shoot something at sunset, at golden hour, at blue hour, you want to process that a little bit differently than midday. And it recognizes the time of day. And this is very similar to a filter that we have in our Luminar product, which is the sky filter, the AI sky filter, or the sky enhance filter. So it's actually creating a mask and enhancing the qualities of the sky from that time of day. If we look at the original, doesn't really pop, but the post-processing really pulls out those pinks of the sunset. It doesn't make it blue like you think it would in the middle of the day. So that's a very nice feature. Depending on the time of day, it is image aware and can make your skies look better, whether you've taken them right at sunrise or right at the blue hour, all the way through sunset and the moments afterwards. The other thing you can do with an image, and I'm going to pick a more midday image to work with, is in addition to controlling how little or how much AirMagic will do to the image. And once again, I am always blown away with what it can do. And you'll notice as I move this to the left, the image kind of shudders a little bit. And what's happening is it's not really shuddering. You see the lens correction that's been applied. So this is lens correction is on. I'm not going to turn it off because I want you to see, in this case, AirMagic has recognized the sensor and has fixed that distortion that's native in this lens. There's an additional button all the way to the left of the interface. And if you click on that, it opens up a handful of styles that you can apply to your image. Now, styles are one button changes that can modify the look of your image, and you can always download additional styles from our website by simply clicking the plus button, which will take you to the Skylum website specifically to styles that you can download for AirMagic. But let's take a look at what some of these styles do. So you'll notice they have very, interesting names based upon who developed them or what they do. If we click on cinematic, it reanalyzes the image much quicker the second time around, and you see it really makes this pop. The colors are a lot richer. It's a whole different feel. And still, even though you've applied cinematic, you can dial back or add to how much the cinematic style, as well as the AirMagic processing, is applied to your image. I'm going to apply something a little more extreme, the sandstorm. We'll give it a completely different feel. It's much more of the golden or muted feel. And again, I can switch over here and control how dramatically this affects my image. So with sandstorm applied, my sky is more muted. It's a whole different emotional feel with my image. And we have a variety that you can choose from. So you can go through and you can try the different looks. They're based upon every image is a little bit different. We'll look at emotional. I am really a big fan. This is kind of neat. This is very aqua. It's way over the top, and that's because I had slid my adjustment slider all the way to the right. But if I pull that back a little bit, I can see now I'm getting something that I like a little bit better. So it's a great way to not only enhance your images, but to stylize your image, and it's very convenient. So that's a general overview of what you could do to an image. Let's take a look at, again, the batch processing. Maybe I like this look. I'm going to apply all these settings to all of my images. It'll go through and process them, and then I can export all of my photos. And you can see these are updating, but technically I don't have to wait for them to update to export. This is really just creating a reference thumbnail. And the nice thing about the reference thumbnail is I can go into any of these and tweak it so that maybe 9 out of 10 of these I really like what it's done. And you can see, look, DJI Phantom 4 Pro, it recognized the camera, and that way it recognized the correction. And this is the before, and this is after with my stylizing and enhancement. And that's pretty cool. But if I want to change that, I can dial it back for that specific one. There's my lens correction if I wanted to turn it off if I don't like what it's done. Now, when I move that left and right, you don't see any difference in the shape of the image. But on this image, I don't want emotional. I want cinematic. And so this one image is now modified from the other ones. I can close it. And now that I'm done, I simply click on export all these photos. If I decide there's a photo that I don't want to use, I can remove just that image so I don't have to export all of them if perhaps I dropped in one where the shutter didn't quite work the way I wanted to on my drone. Or I could just export one of the group and go with that. But we're going to go with exporting all of them. If I choose email, it will actually size them down so they're email digestible or sendable, and then open up your email program and you're ready to just put in the addresses and you can share them directly. So that's really nice. I'm not going to take the time to do that, but I'm going to go back to disk just so you can see your options. It asks me where I want to save them. And then there is my options folder. So right now, when you export 10 images, you don't see the same interface at first blush. And so you could just hit save and it's going to save all of those. But if I click on options, that's where I get this choice here, which we saw earlier, and then I can click on advanced settings. And this is where some of the features that I showed you earlier really come into play, because I'm exporting a whole bunch of images. So I likely want to add a suffix. And it remembered that I was adding that AirMagic suffix to this that I created earlier. But I can modify this so if I want to output a whole folder, whether they're TIFFs or JPEGs, how compressed they are, I can do it very easily. So if I switch over to JPEG, I could hit continue. It's going to throw these all on my desktop. I didn't choose to create a new folder before I stepped in here, so it's going to clutter my desktop a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. Actually, I won't hit continue because I want to be able to get to the Photoshop and the Lightroom and the Photos part and still leave enough time for questions. But if I hit continue right now, it would process all of these images. And if I had 1,000 images, I'd probably go get a sandwich and come back. But it's really quick and it just goes through, analyzes each one, and makes the best decision on each image based upon your settings. So it's not something where it's just global. It's just, oh, I'm going to do the same tone mapping to this one as to the next one. No, what it's actually doing in the case of each image is it's looking at how aggressive you were in blending the AirMagic with the original photo, that slider, whether you had the lens correction on, and if you applied a specific style. So each individual photo is analyzed and corrected to the best of it can be, but they're not universal corrections of luminance and black point and shadows and highlights thrown across all of them. And that's important to take note of. It's not a generic fix, it's a smart artificial intelligence fix. So let me go ahead and close this. And I'm going to close this out. And again, we saw this window earlier. I said quit anyway. If I had exported all of these and I'm ready to go, I could say start over. It just dumps everything else, keeps the application open, and I could drop more images on there. Let's see how well this works with as a plugin for Lightroom for Photoshop, and we'll also do photos for Mac because we have about 2/3 Mac users on here. I want to just close this to have a nice little interface. So we have our folders here. And if I want to work with some of these images, I can open up this other folder. So we have something new to work with. I can open up any of these in Photoshop. I'll open up this TIFF file and I'll simply drag it onto Photoshop. It will launch the image. It will launch Photoshop. I can process the image any way that I want and with my Photoshop tools. And then when I'm ready to take advantage of AirMagic, which I could do at the beginning or the end of my workflow, all I do is I select that layer. Under Filter is Skylum Software, and I choose the AirMagic plugin. It will send it over to AirMagic. As you see, very quickly, its analysis made it better. I have all the same choices that I had before. If I want to stylize this, let's give this more of that sandstorm look. And then when I'm done, I click Done, and it will now send this processed image back to Photoshop, where I can continue to work with it in Photoshop by adding other adjustment layers. Maybe there's other plugins I want to work with. Maybe I want to send it to Luminar, but I've done the magic already, and I'm ready for the next step. Now, there's another way that you can work with an image in Photoshop. I'm going to undo this. I'm going to go to my history and just go to the point that I opened it up. And let me close that down a second. So now I'm back to the original state. Instead of keeping this as a regular layer, I can right-click on it and convert this to a smart object. When I convert a layer in Photoshop to a smart object, it allows me to apply filters to it, but it doesn't lock them in. Let me show you how that works. So I've made this a smart object. I'm going to once again send it over to Skylum and to AirMagic. I'm in AirMagic. The plugin has been started. This is the default. I don't have any style to it, but I'm going to really push this. Click on that. I'm going to look through my cinematic styles. Maybe I'll try cinematic. I like it. I hit done. It exports it back to Photoshop. does all of its magic and processing, gives us a nice little tip. There's my after, but you'll notice this is different. I can toggle off, because it's a smart object, just what that filter is doing. But more so is that if I save and quit, or I don't even have to save and quit, but assuming I save and quit and open this up the next day and go, what was I thinking on that cinematic filter or cinematic style, I can simply double click on the AirMagic filter, and now I can modify how it enhanced this. So I'm going to go back, switch it out from cinematic to maybe Zephyr, and now I can hit done. It goes back to Photoshop, but now it has the Zephyr style applied, and I can continue to do my work. So that's really nice that you have that flexibility of working with this as a smart object. And of course, once it's inside Photoshop, all the things that you can do in Photoshop, if you want to enhance or crop or tweak or content-aware fill, you can do. Let me close that out and show you how the workflow is from Lightroom. I'm going to open up my Lightroom catalog. And my Lightroom catalog already has these images imported. So I can work from here just like I would normally in Lightroom. I can rate my images, I can label them, I can add keywords, maybe I already have this all organized. I can apply any kind of modification if I want to this image prior to sending it to AirMagic. Once I've done everything I've wanted to do or needed to do, or in some case nothing, and I'll tell you, one of the things I sometimes need to do is if I've been flying a drone and something got on the sensor, sometimes I'll have some spots that I want to clean up in Lightroom. It's really good at cleaning up those little spots. But now I'm ready to process this image. Once again, I can send this to AirMagic. And when I send it to AirMagic, it's going to give me some options in Lightroom to work with. I can send a copy of it with the modifications I've already made with Lightroom. I can choose to edit a copy if I wanted to, or I can edit the original image. Generally, I'm going to use with edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments, and then I can choose what format I want to send, and the default is really what you want to work with, which is a TIFF file at 16 bits, because that's going to give you the greatest quality image into AirMagic. It'll give you the most dynamic, not the most dynamic range, but it will give you the most nuance between your shadows and your highlights because of the 16 bits. I click on edit, you'll see it'll open up the interface that we are very familiar with. I am always amazed. I've been using this program now for a few months, and I'm amazed at what it can do to an image just out of the box. So sometimes I have to step back myself. So this is the image. If I like it, I can do everything else I wanted to. I'm going to just take a look at what's cinematic. Sometimes I just feel like popping my colors. I do like that. It might be a little bit much. I'll dial it back. And what happens when I'm done is it will send this image back, and there'll be a copy of it in my Lightroom catalog. So the original image will still be there. I'm going to hit G for gallery, and you can see I have my original image. So that's pristine the way I left it when I sent it to AirMagic. And then I also have the modified image with the AirMagic adjustments, which of course now I can continue to process or leverage the things I might do with this image inside of Lightroom. If I wanted to, I could select multiple images inside of Lightroom. And if I wanted to, and I say edit, I will open this up in AirMagic. What happens here, it'll use the same default settings, and I always use the same settings, is it will open these images up one at a time, and it'll let me process them. So basically it's like preloading a bunch of images, and I can take a look and I can say, yeah, I like what that's done. And then it sends it back. And as soon as that one goes back into Lightroom, it will launch the next image for me to work with. So you'll notice it pauses a second, and because what it is doing is analyzing each image for its own essence, for what's in the image, how much sky, or if it's all top down, it will look at it differently. And then I can tweak that one, modify it the way we've seen it before, hit done. As soon as this one's done, we'll have one more that I've queued up, and we'll just hit done so we can step out of that. But it's really nice. I don't have to keep going back and forth between Lightroom and AirMagic just to load a new image. So it's very efficient if I wanted to grab a whole slew of images, yet do some sort of custom work on each one. And if you look closely, there's my befores and my afters. You see 1 of 2, 2 of 2, and you can just see in this case, they're not in the same order. There we go. We should have these. Oh, I know, because I'm only looking at my digital negatives. I want to look at all of them. There we go. And now we have our before and our after, and you can see how well that's enhanced. And I'll go over here to the gallery view because I want to see if I have one more type of image to work with, which a lot of people, we've been looking at some great ones where we're looking at the horizon. But if you're looking down, say for this image, which is of these trees and this highway, you still get this great benefit. It recognizes there's no sky, yet it still has the ability to enhance that image. So we'll open that up, and I could have dropped this directly on AirMagic, but since I was already inside here, I thought it'd be nice. And look at that. The before, it's a little bit less contrast, it's a little more muddy. This one really pops, and it just enhances the color and the sharpness and the saturation all with a single click. And I'll hit done just so we can step out of that. Finally, before we go to questions, I'm going to show how it would work if you are using Apple Photos or Photos for the Mac. Let me quit out of Lightroom. I really do want to quit. That's what it said. And let me launch Photos for the Mac. There we go, Photos, and I should have a slew of images. Yes, already dropped in. I dropped in a whole bunch of my AirMagic samples. So if you're in Photos, all you need to do is select the image that you want to work with. Let me pick something we haven't looked at before. These are all really pretty images, so I'm just kind of distracted by the shiny objects. But I can select any one of these, load it in, and if I click on the Edit button on the far upper right, it will give me the option to work with anything here within Photos, but there's also 3 dots over here under Extensions. I can click on that, and there we have AirMagic as one of my options. When I do that, it will take that image with all its adjustments, send it over to AirMagic, just like we saw from Lightroom, just like we saw from Photoshop. I can, once again, do whatever I want, but out of the box, love what it's doing. I'm going to hit Save Changes. It will now send the processed image back to Photos. Once you're inside of Photos, unlike in Lightroom, the way Apple works is that image is replaced. So if we look at my library, if I step back out of this, and I just want to show you, let's see if I can do, this is the before, this is the after of AirMagic. You'll notice that it also, because there's a little shift in not perspective, but you can see there was lens correction done. So if I hit done, I can step back and look at all my photos again. But I may say, you know what? I don't like what I've done. I want to see the original. And this is the way Photos works on the Mac with all images that use extensions. I can take that image, hit edit. Once I'm back in the edit mode, I have a revert to original button because it's always saved. The Mac always saves it. And I'm going to click revert to original. So technically it is completely non-destructive. I can hit done, and now I'm back to the version without the AirMagic processing. That's a big overview of how AirMagic can work. We have a lot more information on our website. We're going to take some questions, and then Laurie will show you where you can get the download for AirMagic. And as a matter of fact, when you download it, it's an unlimited trial before you buy it, which is really great. So you can really decide if you like it. Now, when you download the trial, there are a couple limitations to what you can do, but you don't have like 7 days or 14 days to decide. It'll keep working. So the limitations are you can only export an image that's 12,000 pixels wide. It will also watermark it. And when it's the trial, you're just using the self-contained version, the app version. You don't have access to the plugins. But it will tell you if it really is doing the things to your image that you want. So with that, I will have Laurie take over and show you where you can find things.
Very good. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take over the screen so I can show everyone where they can find more information. So folks, hopefully you can see the AirMagic Skylum website. and up on your screen. So if you want to go to, just go to Skylum, and then you can hover over AirMagic over here, and there's going to be a drop-down section where you can actually access a lot more information, including download a free trial, try it out, like Abba said. It is an unlimited trial with some caveats to it, but we're pretty sure you're gonna love it. You can also purchase it here. And also on the right-hand side, we have some educational options for you, as well as FAQs, a user guide, which I'm going to show you here for a moment. So if you had some specific questions about installation, using it as a standalone, using it as a plugin within some of these programs, you can access this here. We also have a really great support team. So there are a few folks that were asking some technical type questions, and I was recommending that they email the team. Also, if you have some future recommendations, they are collecting a list of future features that they may add in the future. So you can just email support@skylum.com, or you can just click on this little link here as well. Thank you again, everyone, for watching this presentation. Abba, thank you for a great presentation. That was really fun. We hope that you folks will try it. If you're using it, please continue to do so. Let us know how you like it. Okay, everyone, have a great rest of your day.